Hello and welcome to TalentSprint again for a video presentation on one of the very interesting and important aspects of banking, and that is called nomination. This aspect of nomination is a very crucial one for depositors in banks, and we should understand it thoroughly because a nomination is the greatest facility one can have for a depositor after his demise. Simply to put, nomination is a facility whereby the account holder authorizes a certain person or an entity to receive the money on his demise. That is called a nomination. Nomination is a facility that enables an account holder to nominate an individual. There is a small error here. A nominee need not necessarily be an individual. As we will see in the later stages of this video, it can be even an entity who can claim the proceeds of the account after the demise of the account holder. The important point to note here is that the nominee or the person being nominated is a person chosen by the account holder. The nominee cannot nominate himself. It's a person chosen by the account holder. And number two, the money will be given to the nominee only on the demise of the account holder and not otherwise. During the lifetime of the account holder, the nominee will not get any money. That is the important thing to understand in nomination. This nomination facility is not only available for deposit accounts, it is also available for safe deposit lockers as well. A person can nominate anybody as the legal entity to legal person or entity to receive the contents of the safe deposit locker in the event of his death. So now nomination can be for safe deposit lockers also. The benefit of nomination is that in the event of the death of the account holder, the bank can release the account proceeds without insisting upon a succession certificate, letter of administration or a court order, because nomination supersedes all other things. Let's understand this very closely. The advantage with nomination is that when a person is nominated beforehand by the account holder, and when this account holder dies, the nominee or the person who is being nominated can go to the bank and get the proceeds of the account without the bank having to wait for a letter of succession or a court order. What is a letter of succession? We will deal with separately. It is nothing to put it simply, a letter of succession is a legal order from the court saying that these following persons are the legal successors or the legal heirs of the deceased account holder. So if no nomination is given, then the bank has to go through the process of getting a letter of succession or a court order and then only release money to the concerned persons. However, when there is a nomination, the nominee can straight away go to the bank and say that here is proof that the nomination has been recorded in my favor, and so please give me the money. Nomination supersedes all other things. This is very important to understand, that nomination supersedes all other things. Nomination can be done, or who can nominate? Nomination can be done by a single account holder or a joint account holders also. When a person has an account only in his name, for example, if I have a savings bank account only in my name, if I do not nominate and in the event of my death, the bank cannot decide to whom the balance in the SB account should go. So a nomination is very essential for me to decide to whom the money should go, and for the bank also to easily hand over the money to the nominee. That is in the case of a single account. It can also happen that even in the case of a joint account, nomination is necessary. Supposing I have an account with my wife, and these days, due to various reasons, predominantly road accidents, etc., the cases of husband and wife dying on the same day are becoming increasingly commonplace. So when the husband and wife die on the same day, and if there is no nomination in place, then the bank again has to go through a process of legal succession, court order, etc. So even in the case of a joint account, the nomination becomes essential. The joint holders can nominate a third party to receive the proceeds of their account on the death of both their both of them. When in a joint account, the important point to note is that when one of the joint holders expires, the money automatically gets transferred to the name of the surviving person. It is only when both the parties expire that the nomination becomes effective. So in other words, even when a joint account has been nominated to another person, that person cannot receive the proceeds of this account unless both the persons in the joint account expire. A nominee is one in whose name the account has been nominated. The person nominating is called the account holder, and the person in whose favor the nomination is given is called the nominee. In the case of joint holders, in the case of joint accounts, all the holders have to sign the nomination form. In case of bank accounts, a maximum of 3 persons are allowed to operate an SB account, or in the case of corporate accounts also, it depends on the board of resolutions on which the banks will authorize the transactions. So in the case of an SB account, when there are 3 persons to an account and they want to nominate a third person as the beneficiary of the nomination, then all the 3 persons have to sign the nomination form jointly. Supposing there are A, B and C in a savings bank account and they decide to nominate D as the nominee, then A, B and C have to sign the nomination form jointly. It cannot be that only A and B or only B and C or only A and C can sign. It has to be signed by all the 3 persons, namely A, B and C. Then only a nomination is valid. In the case of joint accounts, the nomination form has to be signed by all the joint holders together. That is very important. Again, how will the nominee come to know that his nomination is valid? The nominations have to be registered in the books of the bank concerned. The nomination is to be registered in the books of the bank concerned by means of the bank giving a nomination form, and in which the nomination form will contain details of the nominee, his present address, his age and gender, and relationship to the account holders. This nomination form will be signed by the account holder in case of a single account and by all the account holders in the case of a joint account. And this nomination form will be registered in the books of accounts of the bank, and intimation will be given to the account holders as well as the nominee. That is how the nomination process takes place. So it has to be registered in the books of account, otherwise it is not valid. Simply by handing over an application form for nomination does not make the nomination valid unless it is registered in the books of accounts of the bank. So the bank has to register. Who can be nominated? We have seen who can nominate. Now we'll have to see who can be nominated. The persons to be nominated can be anybody. It can be anybody. And the account holder need not be a relative of the nominee, or to put it the other way, the nominee need not be an account holder's relative. Although very often in actual practice, nomination is always done in favor of husband or wife or brother or sister or father-in-law or mother-in-law or father or mother. But in actual law, the nominee need not be a relative of the account holder. Should the nominee be a living entity? No. The nominee need not be a living entity. That means that the nomination can be in favor of non-living entities also. For example, a church or a temple trust, etc., etc. There are many persons who have nominated the Vatican Church as their nominee. I have personally come across instances of that. And there are many persons who have nominated, for example, the Tirumala Tirupati Devasthanam board, TTB board, to receive the money in their accounts in the case of their death. So the nominee need not be a relative of the person, of the account holder. The nominee need not be a living entity also. It can be any non-living entity as well. Can a nominee be a minor? Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Nominee can be a minor. Until the time he attains majority, his natural guardians will be the protector of the account, and on attaining majority, the nomination will automatically pass to the single responsibility or the single benefit of the minor who has since attained majority. So, who can be nominated? Anybody can be nominated. Nominee need not be a relative of the account holder. Nominee need not be a living entity. It can be a non-living entity. And a nominee can be a minor as well. Till the time he attains majority, his natural guardian will be in control of the proceeds, and once the minor attains majority, then the entire benefits will pass on to the minor concerned. And very important point is that when you are talking of nomination, this is a very important point to be noted, that the consent of the nominee is not essential. The consent of the nominee is not essential. When I am nominating, for example, I nominate my son to receive the money into my from my account in case of my demise. My son's consent is not necessary at the time of nomination. Or if I decide to nominate the TTB as the beneficiary of my account, the consent of the TTB is not necessary. It all depends on the account holder's wishes. He can nominate anybody, he can nominate a minor, he can nominate a non-living entity also, and the consent of the nominee is not essential in the case of nomination. That's the most important thing to be noted. How many persons can be nominated? This is another often questions asked in the bank exams. How many persons can be nominated? The minimum number of nominations can be in favor of one person, and the maximum number of nominees is 3. The nominations cannot be done in favor of more than 3 persons or entities, as the case may be. The minimum number is of course 1. In the event of a single nominee, the entire proceeds of the account will go to the nominee concerned. In the event, supposing I nominate only my son as the nominee, then the entire money will go to my son alone and nobody else has a claim on that. In the case of a nomination where the more than one nominee is there, the proportion of the payment of money that is to be given to each nominee has to be decided by the account holder at the time of nomination. I'll give you an example. Supposing Mr. A has a savings bank account with State Bank of India. He decides to nominate his wife, son and daughter as his nominees. Then he must, at the time of nomination, tell what is the proportion of the money to be given to each of them in the event of his death. He can say 50% of the money should go to my wife and 25% each could go to my son and daughter. And if the proportion is not specified, then the proceeds will be given equally to the nominees. Supposing there are only 2 nominees and the account holder has not specified the proportion in which to be given. Going back to the same example of the person A having an SBI account with the SBI, if he has nominated his wife and son as the nominees, if he does not give the proportion in which it is to be given to them, then 50% of the money will go to the wife and 50% of the money will go to the son. On the other hand, he can actually say that 70% of the money will go to my wife and 30% to my son, in which case the bank will act accordingly. So nomination, in case it is not specified, will be given to the parties concerned or to the number of nominees in equal proportion. Where, however, a proportion is already given, the bank has to abide by that proportion. Can nomination be changed? There's another very often frequently asked question, both in the minds of the deposit holders and amongst the banks and amongst the aspirants to the bank exams. Can a nomination be changed? And if so, how many times? Yes, the nomination can in fact be changed during the lifetime of the account holder, and it can be changed any number of times as he pleases. Today I can nominate my son and my daughter as my nominees, forgetting to add my wife in that list. Tomorrow I have a change of heart, say that I would like to include my wife also. I can do that. Or today I say that my wife, son and daughter will be my nominees. Tomorrow I could say that no, my wife will not get anything, only my son and daughter will get it. So it can be changed any number of times as long as the account holder must be alive. The nominations can be changed as long as the account holder is alive. The proportion of the allotment of money to the nominees can also be changed by the account holder during his lifetime. We saw in the previous slides how the proportion has to be specified by the account holder. That means at the time of nomination, one person says that my son will get 50% of the proceeds, my daughter will get 25%, and my wife will get 25%. Later on, as it happens in most cases, the wife wins the appeal, and so he decides to change his mind. So he will say that my wife will get 50% and my son and daughter will get 25% each. So that is also possible. Not only can the nominees be changed, but the proportion of the amount in which the nomination is to be changed, proportion of the amount in which the nominees will get the money can also be changed any number of times by the account holder during his lifetime. This is an important facility given to the account holder, so that in these days where, I'm sorry to use that example, but where marital discords are happening, the husband and wife separate, sometimes after the birth of their first child. So then what happens originally when the husband has nominated his wife as the sole nominee, then he divorces his wife, then he changes the nominee to that of the child. The child can be a minor, that's not a problem. So that is how the nomination operates. It can be changed, it can be changed any number of times, and it can the proportion in which the money is to be given can also be changed. Is nomination to be registered? Well, it is not mandatory, but it's better to register it. Register it not only in the books of the bank, but also with a competent authority, say the sub-registrar, so that all legal disputes can be avoided in later times. The most important point to note is that nomination rules are the same for all assets, not only for bank deposits. They are the same whether you have a bank deposit, or whether you have a house, or whether you have gold, or whether you have a safe deposit locker, or whether you have a mutual fund, or whether you have an insurance policy, and so on and so forth. So it's the same for all asset classes. While banks, mutual funds, and insurance companies will automatically record nomination, in case of other assets, it's better to register the nomination to avoid future hazards. So banks and mutual funds and insurance companies automatically record the nomination details in their books of accounts. But in the case of a housing property or a car or a gold jewelry, it is better to register with the sub-registrar so that future hazards can be avoided. So this in essence is all about nomination. I think we have covered extensively the process of nomination. What is nomination? Who can nominate? Who can be nominated? How a nomination takes place in the case of a single account? How a nomination takes place in the case of a joint account? What is the maximum number of nominees that can be allowed? Can nomination be changed? If so, how many times? Can nominations be given to a minor? Can nominations be given to a non-living entity? And can the proportion of the amount which the nominees are entitled, can it be changed? If so, how many times? All these questions we have answered. And we have also understood that nomination rules are the same for all the classes of assets. So this is a very important subject on banking, namely nomination, and it's better to keep this in mind thoroughly when you write your bank exams, all the points concerning nomination, because this could be a matter of question very often being asked. Nomination is a very important step in the life of an account holder. It is always better to nominate and ensure the money goes to the right person which the account holder intends to. Otherwise, the existing or the surviving account or the surviving people associated with the account holder will be led to a lot of legal hassles. In order to avoid that, it's better to nominate somebody as a nominee right at the first instance. And remember, we also talked that single account nomination is a must, while in the case of joint accounts, while it is not a must, it is desirable, because it is probable that both the account holders can expire on the same day, in which case without a nomination it becomes very difficult for the legal heirs to get their money. Or I can't say it is very difficult, it becomes very cumbersome. So in order to avoid all the cumbersome nature, it's better that to nominate a person right at the first instance, and it's better to nominate a person whom you think will be the most eligible person, eligible to receive the money after your demise. This amounts to expressing your confidence in that person, that look here, you are my nominee after my death. And this applies not only to bank deposits but to safe deposit lockers, and as I told you, all classes of assets. So this is about nomination. I'm sure you would have enjoyed watching this video in as much as I have enjoyed presenting the same. It's a very important subject, and until I see you in the next video, is bye from me for now. Thanks for watching. Bye.